I think it's time to earn that oxygen in my lungs. Kids out there, if you're listening to this, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to change your perspective on the world. You're either part of the problem or you can be a part of the solution.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 125, episode number 206. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for checking out all the other episodes. You guys are awesome. I'm very appreciative and very humbled to have you here right now. This is one of those episodes where you need to actively listen. And what do I mean by that? You need to listen with the intention of applying what you hear. My guest today is Justin Melnick, and he plays a Navy SEAL on CBS's SEAL Team. Some of the answers that he gave me here are some of the most unique answers that I've heard on the podcast. It was very good. It was more of what I really like in a podcast, two-way, like where I'm not just hammering down on questions, but the guest shoots them back at me and we're able to have this conversation that I so thoroughly and passionately enjoy. Justin is a very passionate man. He's a very transparent man, a very open man. And that's how all of these answers were. They were very good, and I'm humbled to have had him on here. We also implemented a new segment into the podcast. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it yet, but around 25 minutes in, I asked within 24 hours on Instagram, what kind of questions would you like me to ask of Justin? So 25 minutes in, I asked 2 questions from the listeners on Instagram. So head over to Instagram at Kristof Lewis and check out who's going to be on the podcast, and you can ask questions as well. Remember, you can find this podcast and all other the conversations, the contemplations on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on any of your favorite podcast listening apps. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, man, it's a blast. It's New Year's Day. I know this is going to come out in a couple weeks, but for those of you listening, today is New Year's Day. So yeah, Happy New Year, man. I know you kind of felt under the weather, so I really appreciate you coming on and speaking with me regardless of that.
Yeah, I lost my voice and that hangover also didn't quite help too much, but hey, a couple cups of coffee and some workout. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's a cocktail for disaster, or maybe the start of a really good year. So I don't know how you want to see that, but yeah, man, no, I appreciate your time coming here. But before we get into the rest of the episode, for those of the listeners that don't know who you are, do you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself?
My name is Justin Melnick, former combat photographer, cop. And I have the awesome privilege of playing a Navy SEAL on a TV show called SEAL Team. That's on CBS.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And there's a lot of reasons actually why I reached out to you originally and why I wanted to have you on here. And we're going to get into those. But one of those is I think it's really cool what you did do, because I'm all about careers and career transitions. And I want to interview people to highlight their stories to encourage other people to go out there and just get after it and do things that they love. And what I saw about what is your story is that you just did a couple different things. And I think that's great. It sounds like you were finding kind of like what you really wanted to do. You were doing a lot of things that you really wanted to do. And then there were some really awesome opportunities that came upon you. You're able to just do these incredible things that you are doing now.
Freelance combat.
Okay. And you were in Afghanistan. I think I saw that somewhere.
I went to go visit some boys in Afghanistan for 3 months.
Good deal.
Did Yemen, northern Uganda, all over a lot of the peaceful countries in the Middle East, Palestine.
Yeah, sounds like a vacation. So how did you get into that gig?
Oh, fuck. Am I allowed to swear on this
Absolutely.
podcast?
Knock it out, man.
Early 2000s, I was like 19, 18, 19 years old, working in restaurants in New York City.
Nice.
Kind of ended up working in the nightlife world, models and bottles and parties and all this crap. It was a lot of fun, but not very fulfilling. Anyway, ended up shooting some models, which kind of started to launch my photography stuff. But again, it just wasn't fulfilled, man. I was out hanging out with beautiful people, but all anyone really ever talked about was where the next vacation was going to
Hmm.
be or what the next party was going to be. And I was just like, I want to do something with my life. I wanted
Yeah.
to see what the world really had to offer. A buddy of mine had just donated a well in Uganda during in 2006 and through his charity, but no one could verify that it actually had been dug because it was during the Lord's Resistance Army reign of nightmare in northern Uganda.
Yeah.
Joseph Kony.
Yeah.
The world later heard about him in 2012 when some hipsters found out about him and created T-shirts saying Kony 2012. They were a little late to the party.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, this dude was crazy, nuts. Google and Joseph Kony. So I was like, "Fuck it, dude! I'll go check. I'll go take some pictures. Let's go." So he gave me a GPS unit with the coordinates programmed into it. Booked
Yeah.
the flight to Uganda. He hooked me up with some local contacts, made some friends. Spent a month running around after finding that well,
Damn.
and just like trying to get the story of these children.
Yeah.
What I was going through. And man, combat photography is more contagious than herpes, man. You
It's pretty contagious.
get it like Morpheus looked at Neo and said, "Hey, man, take the blue pill. You'll wake up in your bed, but you take this red pill, and I'll show you just how far this rabbit hole goes." The information that you get from being there, you can't learn on the news.
Hmm.
Ultimately, it took every. I'd never been able to complain about a meal since.
Yeah,
I've
man.
never been able to send food back since. You see what majority of the world is going through, and like, oh, so your eggs are overcooked? Well, you know what,
Yeah,
man?
man.
It's like you're lucky to have those eggs. So it created, and I grew up from a good family, in New York, and like I didn't, the only world that I saw was through the newspaper or through first world vacations. But when you start seeing the way 90% of the world lives, it gives you an appreciation for what you have. And it kind of sets a lot of people up on the crusade to see how they can help the
Hmm.
world be a
Hmm.
better place.
Yeah, man. You're right. You can't learn from the news. I know it's funny you say that because I was in Afghanistan a few times, and I know the first time I was there, things happened, and I was for the first time in my life able to see how they were reported on and know exactly what happened. And I was like, holy fuck! It opened up my mind to like how many other things in this world happen that you do not know at all what's happening. And you're right about the perspective that you gain from traveling to these countries. Not, like even going to other first world countries in like in Europe or something adds a serious perspective. Things are so different, but going to those war torn countries, I know that was a drought. Like I was in my lower 20s when I did that for the first time, and added a really new
But
perspective. What? I'm sorry.
what year were you in Afghanistan?
2011, 12, 13, and 14.
Through you were SEAL or what'd you do?
No, so I was an electronics technician and I was assigned to a SEAL team. And when I was there as an electronics technician, I was an RTO or a radio telephone operator. So I was that guy running around with them doing their satellite and line of sight communications.
Oh, rock and roll.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. The mindset that I have now, when that like really started kicking off, was because of those times that you described and I just described, like being in those situations, and especially I know you. Well, being in the position you are right now on TV, working with those guys, like I know you work with other guys too, because you guys are like to the detail, like, and I know working with those guys has really helped me become the man who I am today. Like, it's one of the most instrumental times in my life. I did want to have people not miss the point where you said you wanted to go there and help other people. So, as the listeners know on here, and if you're a new listener, one of the things I'm huge on is not just selecting guests for the podcast that are going out there and crushing it and doing awesomeness in the world, but people that are helping other people as well. And I probably saw a couple things already off the top of my head that, you're going to schools with your pup and you're teaching the kids with the dog. And I think that's incredible. And one of the other things I wrote down here, because I didn't want to forget it, but I don't know if you're still doing it, but I know about like a year ago you're doing this annual shop with a cop because you're saying you were a former cop. So my point is all of these things out here is why I started in the beginning of the podcast, why I really wanted to talk to you is not because of the awesomeness, which is Justin Melnick, but of what you are doing out there helping other people. And I always want to encourage other people to go out there and do things like that. And I think some of that may be rooted from the things that you just described to me then. But that leads me into my question that I always like asking my guests is why do you choose to donate your time? Why do you choose to go out there and, like you said, help all these children, teach these kids these things, and even in those foreign countries that you talked about?
Oh man, life is short and life is very, very fragile. We're given a very finite amount of time on this earth, and I've sucked a lot of oxygen up in my early 20s. I didn't think I contributed enough. So now I'm in a position that I can really make a difference. I think it's time to earn that oxygen in my lungs. And, kids out there, if you're listening to this, it's never too late to start. It's never too late to change your perspective on the world.
Yeah.
You're either part of the problem or you can be a part of the solution. And, I got done doing all the photography stuff. Actually almost joined the military. I wanted to join the Army.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't commit to it for some reasons. And, I will always wonder if I could have done it. One of my largest regrets in life is not serving my country. Ended up working as a cop in Indiana, still sworn.
Yeah.
Shop with a cop is always an important one for me, just because it's really important, in my opinion, for the community to always have interaction with law enforcement.
Yeah.
The community is law enforcement's best source of information. It's the people that we're there to serve and protect. And it starts with the kids. It's like, if you can create one positive experience for a kid with a cop, it's maybe you inspire him or her to grow up and become people, so.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I ask that question a lot of times. Some of the questions I get is like, why do you ask that question? It's so obvious. Like, why would I not help people? But I always ask the question because, once again, easily you've given a different answer than any other guest has ever given. And I love being able to highlight the differences of that. And man, yeah, no, you definitely absolutely would have cut it if you served, and you did serve the country by being a police officer. Because I say it all the time to my wife, like, I could not do that job, man. It would be, good on you for doing that. So you absolutely were. And you're continuing to serve the community by contributing and doing like that with the kids and everything like that. So what I wanted to get back to was you told us how you became a freelance war photographer, and then you did that for a little while. You were able to be more fulfilled. It sounds like a lot more fulfilled by doing that, because you had this lack or this hole of just living and sucking air out of the ozone, like you were saying. So what had you go from being this war photographer to being a police officer?
It all kind of culminated in Afghanistan. So I went over there and was doing a bunch of stories for, I wouldn't say that it was propaganda. I don't like that term, but we had a lot of National Guard guys doing amazing things. Their families creating school packages and backpacks, sending school supplies, and with their own money, through their churches or through their local organizations. And then the troops would go out and distribute them to the kids. And like, the media wasn't picking up on these stories, and it needed to get documented. So I went out, spent a lot of time with different units for 3 months, ended up getting lost and, embedding with some 101st Airborne guys, and they kind of had it rough. And I wanted to be part of the solution. I didn't want to just observe anymore. I truly, truly love the people of Afghanistan. They're some of the strongest, most resilient humans I've ever seen in my life. The Taliban, do they pose a threat to us domestically? No. But as Americans, do I think that we need to preach our politics on people? No. But I believe that if there's a little kid in a schoolyard getting bullied, it's our job to jump in there and protect them, and not trying to change their beliefs, their religion, but, things like basic medical care for women. It's important. The fact that the animals have better access to health care than a little girl, or that a little girl will get married off at 14 years old, or that a little boy will get raped repeatedly. Anyone who's spent any time in Afghanistan has seen a chai boy walk out of an AMP or Afghan National Police, building at 4 a.m. without look of defeat. And it's like, I'm not trying to change your entire culture, but there's some things that are barbaric that you need to reevaluate. So yeah, I wanted to help fix that stuff, man. I got out and I started going through all the paperwork for the 18X program.
Mm-hmm.
It was an Army program, and ended up having a real world decision about my personality and,
Mm-hmm.
Some of my character flaws as a human being. Realized that I didn't work well in some group settings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard for me to get along with people sometimes. I'm slightly on a spectrum. And I had to figure out another way I could help and serve,
Mm-hmm.
just that.
Yeah, man. I love, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I love the transparency. I'm very, very, very transparent with the listeners here. They know a lot about me. And I think that's the one way to grow as an individual. I know it's one way to grow and be able to help other people. So I know that all these things that you've been talking about are trying to gain fulfillment for yourself, but being honest with yourself, knowing where you can succeed at, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and then going down that route, because obviously going down that route, you've been able to contribute like you wanted to, be able to fulfill yourself and help others like you wanted to, and you clearly have been able to do that. And so I think understanding, like I said, understanding your strengths, understanding maybe you want to do something, but maybe that's not the right thing for you. Because like I said, I talk about career transitions a lot, guys. So, if you want to really do something like Justin said here, then maybe that's not the right path for you. Maybe there's another path that's better suited for you. And I think a lot of opportunities come out because you were honest with yourself to have these kind of questions asked of yourself, which I think is very healthy to do. And you're able to do that and then become a police officer, which obviously led into what you're doing now. And then I think now, because of all the things that you just described to me, now you even have a louder voice. So now you're even able to help even more than you ever would have before. So I think it's like a classic tale of, if you're honest with yourself and you ask yourself these questions and you didn't force yourself into it, like you knew that you may not work well in that situation. So you went a place where you thought you would and you succeeded and you excelled. And now you're in a better place. Maybe. I mean, we won't know, and that doesn't matter. That's erroneous right now because you have what you have now. So I do appreciate you sharing that with us, and I hope everybody takes that from that. I mean, as I say in these episodes a lot, I learn as well. Obviously, they're for me. I really want to learn from my guests and from you as well. So I do appreciate that. It makes me look back onto myself and understand that, if maybe I'm not good somewhere, then, maybe I need to reevaluate it, like you said, and think about if that truly is the right path for me. Which leads us into what you're doing now. On top of everything we've already discussed right now, have there been like some specific behaviors in your life that have led to what, quote unquote success you've had in your life? Are there anything that stands out that you'd love to share with us?
Yeah. It's actually funny. I was just having this conversation with a buddy this morning.
Nice.
I would say that my success in life has come from two things. One is I never say no, unless it's immoral or illegal. I don't say no. Any opportunity, I will figure out a way to make it work. And then the other one is I don't really have a grasp on reality. So I ask a lot of people for things that normal people wouldn't ask, someone to do. My rule of thumb is I don't ask anybody to do anything that I, A, would not be willing to do for myself, or B, be willing to do for a stranger.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of run by that, but where a lot of people have like built-in censorship, they won't ask certain questions of people, whereas I lack that censorship for some reason, and I'll just ask for the craziest shit. And most of the time it happens. So
Yeah, but again, it's like you said, like you know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You know you, and I think a lot of people don't know themselves as well as maybe they think they do. At least in my humble opinion, from what I see and from when I talk to other people. So being again honest with yourself, I think is a strength, and I think it is interesting that you never say no, because I see a lot of things, or you try not to never say no, and everything is so like. Everybody says a lot of things, and I think a lot of people say, you need to know when to say no. Like, I guess, do you see yourself, do you see yourself like doing too much sometimes for other people? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, I'm all for that, but
100%, and I'm
okay.
fucking exhausted.
Yeah. So are you over exhausted?
Exhausted. Like
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
retire into a dark room for a week and sleep.
Yeah.
Here's the deal, man. Is like life is short and there's a lot to get done.
Yeah.
There's no, if it's not illegal or not immoral, and you can look yourself in the eye after doing it, do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose an extra hour of sleep one night and you only get to sleep 5 hours as opposed to 6, you'll survive. You know, I believe that. I believe that is the secret to life, is to be an asset in whatever way possible.
No, and I appreciate that. I couldn't articulate it well enough, and I didn't want to give you a shitty question. I wasn't trying to really stray away from it, but I wanted to owe you a good question. So I appreciate you continuing that, because I do think that's really important to say. You went to school, right? I think I saw something. I'm sorry?
I went to high school.
Yeah, me too. I'm a college dropout, and I always like asking about education as well. And obviously, you've been able to do a lot of things, with that education. I mean, I'd love to hear your opinion on education in general, continued education, and
so my
ideas like
biggest
that.
regrets in life, and I try not to regret things because I think out of every mistake, there's a lesson to be learned. But if I could go back and turn back the clock and do 2 things different in my life. One, I would have never introduced tobacco products into my life. I wouldn't have chewed or smoked.
Yeah.
Thank God I've been able to kick it, but every day, miss it. And number 2 is dropping out of college. I went to college for like half a year and dropped out. I think back and I tell any kid I talk to about this kind of stuff that wants to do stuff for special operations or work for the government on any capacity, I always say this: go into the military at 18, do college classes while you're in the military.
For free.
While you're there online, get a degree. Just keep that muscle working in your head. Because once you take 2 or 3 years off using it, it doesn't work the same. And do I think that a college degree is important to have? No. But I think the piece of paper that other people perceive to be important makes it important to have.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of jobs in the government that require, like, if you want to work for the CIA, you got to go to college. You want to work for the FBI, you need to go to college. You want to work for any federal law enforcement, you need to go to college.
Yeah.
So,
and again, like I said earlier, in regard to something else, it's not always black and white. There's some institutions that absolutely require a college degree, and I do absolutely subscribe to the notion that it's a muscle. Like the way you described it is perfect. Like you need to be able to continuously do that, and that's why I was talking about continued education. If you don't use it, you're definitely going to lose it, and your mind is going to atrophy just as the muscle does. I think that's really important. I want to ask you one more thing, and then I'm going to pivot to something new I want to do on the podcast, actually. And you're guest 125, and I'm going to try something new in just a moment. But I want to ask, I love talking about mentors and mentorship. I know, again, that mentorship isn't just something that just goes, hey, do you want to mentor me? And they're like, yes. Like a lot of times it's this relationship that builds over time, and this is just a person that you are able to speak with and ask personal questions, career questions. But have you had anybody in your life like that? And if so, how did you acquire them?
Everyone's a mentor to me. I learn from every single person, every field, every job I've ever done. Anyone who's been there and done it, you just ask questions, talk to them. People want to help. Majority of people are good. You know, people care. People want to be asked questions, and you can learn so much just by talking to them.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. That's really awesome. I definitely agree with that. I do think I even wrote it the other day. I said, I think literally everybody has something to teach me, even if it's not, or even if it's what not to do. So, I think that's a good mindset to approach situations with. Yeah.
Now I'm like a little bit, I have a little less free time, but back in the day when I was working in law enforcement, I would go to any shooting course, even if there was some ass clown out there running around dressed head to toe in black with a gun. I'd go to the course and I'd learn, because you know what? Maybe they break something down and I learned a different way to teach. maybe I learn one small thing. In the worst case scenario, I learn that there's tactics out there that people are employing that don't actually work.
Yeah.
You learn what not to do. So.
Yeah, man, because if you go into on the other end of the spectrum, if you go into that with thinking that this person can teach me something, I think you block out a lot of that ability to be able to learn what to do or what not to do. So that's awesome. Before we get out of here, we got a couple more minutes for me keeping you on, but I wanted to do something. Go to Instagram. I'm hyper active with the community on Instagram. I mean, I don't have this massive following or anything, but people are very, very passionate about the podcast, and I'm so thankful for your support, everybody. And I like saying it's this two-way podcast. So not only am I delivering content, but people reach out to me, and like I mentioned earlier, people help me talk through some things as well, because I'm huge on having these conversations. That's why I call them conversations, to be able to talk some things out. So I asked them if they want to ask Justin anything, and there's a couple on here, maybe like 10, but I'm going to ask you like maybe 2 of them. I do like one of these, and it says, what's the most rewarding part about working with canines? I think that's a pretty fun question.
I think the most rewarding part about it is that in the morning when you wake up and they're snuggled up next to you in bed and they look at you with those eyes, and then you say, "You ready to go to work?" And they pop up in the air and do a 180 like in a cartoon. And to see that joy in them and that love and that's my partner right there. That's my teammate. I've never had a bond with anything in my life, anybody like I have with Dita. I want to cry just thinking about it.
I love that, man. We got a golden retriever downstairs right now as I'm recording this, and I love her to death. Like the bond that you have, like people that don't have dogs, I don't think they truly get it. But I know I wasn't a dog handler, like I said, but I do know that I did see the dog handlers, and I saw those dogs when they were working with their dog handlers and relationships that they had, especially when they got like kitted up and they were ready to go. I mean, like seeing that synergy there's nothing like it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, now imagine having a dog that knows over 80 commands.
Like, I can't even remember 80 commands. You're like,
wild. It's really the coolest thing in my entire life that's ever happened to me. Obviously, this dog changed my life because I wouldn't be on the show without the dog.
Yeah, that's the craziest story. I mean, to hear how you got on there. Obviously, you're the handler and helping them out, and then you're just able to come onto the show and be integrated and be able to contribute like that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I know you said that was a regret earlier, not doing that path of education, like you said. But again, like it is what it is, and what you've done has allowed you to get where you are now. And I try to take solace in that fact always, especially when I'm experiencing frustration in my life. One of these,
the butterfly effect. You can never say,
Yeah.
You can say, well, if I didn't do that, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
It's life. Live each moment and you take what you can. I learned a lot from the actors I work with on the show. They're all phenomenal people. And one of the greatest lessons I've learned from them is be present. Focus on the now. Don't worry about the later, and don't think about the past. But, be present.
How do you practice that? What is the best way for you to, like, if you realize that you're not being present, how do you reel yourself into present and make yourself truly experience that?
You just catch yourself.
Yeah.
You just catch yourself, and maybe some people meditate or I don't know, and it's not my thing.
Well, it's different for everybody. Yeah, exactly. What works for you is not going to work for somebody else.
Right now, I'm with you. I'm right here with you. In an hour, I'll be doing something completely different, but I will be in that hour. I don't even want to think about it right now. I just want to think about what we're doing.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's one way to do it. You actually have to be at least cognizant that you want to be that type of person, and then you be able to work on it. And for me, it's kind of been like that muscle, like we talked about, like that mental muscle, being able to flex that muscle. That muscle needs to be stronger, of being able to realize that, hey, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that right now. I'm not living in the moment right now. I'm not. It's just like one of those super cliche things that just can be a cliche, but is so true, and I think is overlooked. So I do think that's really important. One of these other questions, it's pertaining to the show. It says, what was the biggest challenge preparing for being a SEAL on TV?
That wasn't super hard, man. I have a lot of friends within the community.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time with people from that community. it is more of like a privilege to me to be able to represent those guys. You know, to prepare, eat a lot of meat, take a lot of protein, and work out. You got to have a balance, though. It's like deployment for military guys. Like right now, we're on deployment, so it's hard to work out. I mean, we're on deployment, so all we can do is work out. It's the exact opposite. So we're like pre-deployment, where I've got time, I can work out, I can hit the gym every day. But you know, like my exercise right now is cutting down trees and hauling logs.
It's good
running
exercise.
up hills, dragging trees. I don't have time to hit the gym, and you know, the same way when guys are on train ups for deployments, there's no time to hit the gym. They're training the whole time. It's just such a privilege, man. It's like,
that's the way I see it.
Some kids grow up, you know, worshiping Batman and Superman, but you know, I always grew up worshiping special operations guys. Like those were my superheroes.
Sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, I feel the same way. I am in agreement with a lot of the things that you said today, but I know, like I was telling you, I was an electronics technician, so being able to work next to those guys in the capacity that they were working at, because they obviously have to go through years of work to get through where they are right now, to be able to work at that capacity. And for me to come in as direct support and be able to be trusted to work next to them, provide communications with them, and be in those situations is, like I said, one of the most defining moments of my life. So I do feel very privileged as well. And I know how much you can learn from people that do work at that level, that work at that capacity. And it's continuously defining. So it's awesome that you're able to do that as well. And man, I've really enjoyed it. I don't know if for you guys listeners, I don't know if I'm going to keep that segment in there. It was kind of fun to ask some of those questions, and I've 125 people. I've never asked guest questions, so if you guys want to continue doing that, let me know. But Justin, I really appreciate it, man. Before we get out of here, let everyone know where they can get a hold of you, whether it be website, Instagram, TV shows, when it airs, etc., etc.
We're on Instagram, Justin Melnick, and Dita's account is Dita the Hair Missile. Look for the blue check mark. Don't be scammed. There's a lot of scumbags out there shaking women down for money pretending to be me. It's crazy.
Damn, that's nuts.
Really nuts. It's actually really sad. It's other people's fault for it. But hey, tune in Wednesday nights, 9 p.m., CBS SEAL Team. If you like military shit, you like America, you believe in freedom, you'll love our show.
I love that. That's such a perfect way to end. Well, you guys will be able to check out all of that in the show notes. All right, Justin, like I said, man, thank you so much for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I do appreciate your transparency, like I said, being able to answer questions in the light that you did. I think that's very important for the personal growth, for the growth of the listeners as well. And I highly encourage you all to reach out to us if you want to continue that conversation. And I think that's very important to continue that growth that you were saying, educational, like mentally, to do that. So thank you so much for your time, man. Happy New Year, and have a great rest of your night, my friend.
Thanks so much, man. Be safe.